I pushed the wrong thing. I meant to stop the camera instead of the microphone. So I was just talking to you guys, and you didn't hear anything, I'm sure. So anyway, I had to start a little bit. I meant to stop the mic. Yeah. So yeah. So here we go. Nobody's watching anyway. If anybody's out there watching, just give me a thumbs up and say hello, and let me know if you can hear the sound. It's picking up on my mic. I can hear my Christmas music playing, so that's that. All right, so we're just waiting for Joe to get the link and join if he's able to. I don't know, this stuff is going kind of slow. I've got a cheap access to the internet. I use my phone as my hotspot, so. All right, anybody out there? Nope, I think it's just me watching my own page, which is exciting to be the only viewer. And what am I doing right here? I'm trying to get out of this. All right, let me see if maybe I spelled his email incorrectly. Eftupworld. I guess I could just copy the invite. seconds. All right, so I just sent him the link directly, then we'll see what happens with this. All right, anybody out there? I've got 2 watching, or at least 1 watching if I'm the other person. Hello out there in Rethinking Revelation land. Hey, can you hear me okay? Mark, can you hear me? And the abbreviation is supposed to take the place of the H. It doesn't go at the end of the O. Yeah, so we're just waiting for my guest. Yeah, it's my Christmas music that I've been listening to for the past 20 years. It's a box set, 3 different CDs from Victoria's Secret, nonetheless. They've got the Nutcracker, they've got this one, which is Classical Christmas, and then they've got a CD of Christian hymns, Joy to the World and whatnot. And that's actually pretty good. It's done really well. Except I only have the 2 CDs for the Nutcracker and Classical Christmas. So I still need to get the other one, but it's hard to come by. I just ordered these from Amazon this year. So okay, well, waiting for Joe. I mean, pagan Christmas music? Well, I mean, music is music. I guess if it's made by people who aren't Christians, they're pagans. I don't know. You know what they say in the Christian world?
All talking, but I can't hear you. Hold on just a second. I forgot to turn on my speaker. Sorry, man.
That's all right.
Let's see. Oh, okay. Let's see. Okay, how you doing, man?
I'm good. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I think I might have to get headphones. For some reason, I have trouble with my microphone sometimes picking up your voice.
Yeah, I could hear myself a little bit in the background. So.
Okay, give me about 2 seconds and let me just grab some headphones. It's probably just easiest.
Okay.
Can you see my screen there?
I can, yeah.
You like my little globe there I got going?
Yeah, it's very appropriate, right?
Yeah, I got oops, sorry. This software that I bought for $50. Whoops. All right, now that should be much better, I think. Whoops. All right, can you say something just so I make sure I can hear you?
Yeah, I can say something.
What did I do now?
Sound check.
You know what? I'm gonna jump out and then jump back in. I think. Oh wait, I think I can hear you now.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Okay, I got you now. Sorry about that. You can hear me okay too?
Yeah. And I've got a thumbs up from the peanut gallery out there watching.
All righty.
All one of them.
All one of them. Hey, you know what?
You dropped off there for a second. I didn't hear you after you said, hey, you know what?
Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. Uh-oh, what did I do now?
I can hear you.
Okay, good.
You're okay on my side.
I just have to get used to the silence. I'm not used to it. So how are you doing, Travis? Nice to meet you. I think I actually met you at the conference, didn't I?
Yeah. We said hello. I don't remember exactly when and where, but I do remember saying hi to you.
I think I remember asking you if you were Paul. Because
Paul on the
yeah, I asked because I had seen you sitting kind of in like the, I don't know what room that would be called at the hotel there, and like with your laptop and stuff. And I'm like, I wonder if I should go over there and just say hi. I know he's got to be somebody from the conference, you know. But
yeah. And then after that, it was just all busyness and whatnot. So I don't think we came across each other, but maybe once. So, but yeah, good to meet you. And how was your holiday?
It was uneventful, I guess, is what I'd say. But you know, it's not. I'm not like against the holiday thing like a lot of people seem to be lately, but I am. You know, I definitely think that we've all been kind of, you know, tuned to a certain tune, and I don't think that tune is quite right, but whatever.
And are you of the mind to stand against, at least in a little resistance of the new year being the new year as opposed to the spring equinox?
Yeah, I think the Gregorian calendar that we go by is, you know, I don't think, I guess what I mean is I don't think there's anything like evil about just us growing up in this world, but now that we're having truth revealed to us on many levels, and I think that if we ignore the truth that's revealed to us, it would be the same as, you know, starting that evil. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's an interesting thing to start to look at the world in a different way, and that's one thing that I know that there are so many things that run in the background of your mind that you might have what I call paradigm hiccups. You know, you have certain things that just don't make sense in the paradigm, and having the new year start in the middle of winter was, you know, one of those things. It's always just like, that doesn't really make that much sense.
Yeah. And, you know, I think that to me, like, you know, and I don't get into the science end of it very much. I mean, it's interesting, but I have like interests in other areas, but it is interesting to me how the moon works. The moon seems to be a much better way to, this is just my personal opinion, what, you know, from looking up at the stars and telescopes and paying attention to the heavens. I think for me that it's the moon would make a lot more sense to go by, because it's, I guess, yeah, I don't have too much of an opinion on it, but
yeah, definitely, it's interesting. So you know, before we jump into the discussion of what we were talking about in our Facebook threads, we're right at the cusp of the new moon. So I'm gonna have cloud cover from what my app says for the next few days. So I'm not going to be able to see the new moon. Not that it, you know what I mean. I'm not going to be able to try to see what's going on up there. But I thought it was really interesting to watch the moon and the sun a few days ago, and the angle at which they were in the sky. So the moon was still visible in the sky until maybe 1 o'clock, 1:30 in the afternoon. But yeah, it's just been cloudy the past couple of days. I haven't been able to track it and see where it's at now. But wherever you're at, you're up in Minneapolis, right?
Yep. Yeah, and it's been pretty cloudy here. I caught a couple stars last night, but it's been like cloudy. I don't know. consistently for a couple months. I mean, there, of course, a few days of sunlight and whatever, but not very many. So,
yeah. Okay, well, let me do a quick shout out. Welcome to everybody. Welcome to Rethinking Revelation, everyone out there. This is I don't know. I'm trying to see what can happen with presenting an end times debate format. I'm your host, Travis Finley, and if you are new to this channel, Rethinking Revelation, please make sure you subscribe and hit the bell notification to keep up to date with any of the posts and episodes that might be coming up as I go through biblical interpretation. So today, my guest is Joe Hill, and as you might have heard just a minute ago, Joe is from Minneapolis. Why don't you just introduce yourself briefly, Joe, and tell us what you're about and what makes you tick?
Well, I'm just regular old dude, I guess. I'm a carpenter. I swing a hammer and build stuff. I've done that my whole life. And about 3 years ago, I noticed, I can't really say that I noticed. I feel like I'm just going to be totally honest with you because I don't like to prop myself up because I don't have anything to do with this interest that I have. I take an interest in it, but I don't, it didn't stem from me. It stemmed almost from, when SpaceX, I had in my mind just from, flat earth and studying these kinds of things or researching these things, SpaceX and NASA and all that had been, never thought about it, never cared about it my whole life. And then, a few years ago, I saw that Elon Musk, it was December 21st, 2015, that they were successful landing or whatever. They were successful landing that booster, that Falcon 9 booster. And I was like, it really slapped me in the face because of Revelation 13, verse 13, basically. And that kind of is what started me on this thing that I've been kind of trying to show you a little bit back and forth, and hopefully I can explain a little bit of that to you. I don't know how do you want to do it. So
let me jump in real quick and see if this can be a segue for us. So my podcast, Rethinking Revelation, is an attempt to really just have a discussion about interpreting the Bible from Genesis through Revelation. So it's a bit of a double meaning title, Rethinking Revelation. That is, all of the Bible is God's revelation, including nature. So that's God's revelation. But then also, ultimately, the end of the book, because I think that my change in perspective over the past 15 years is really focused on how we think of the message of the Bible and how the Bible ends. So a lot of the things that you've been posting are based upon the way that you read the Bible, and that stands in opposition to the way that I read the Bible. It would be interesting, actually, to come across maybe some other mainstream Christians that would not have necessarily interpreted Revelation the way that you do, because, to be honest, I've never heard anyone treat Revelation in the way that you're approaching it. But so you and I have gone back and forth in terms of the way that you're applying SpaceX to certain particular biblical prophecies. And I have been trying to challenge that and make comments along the way. But ultimately, our discussion is going to hinge on the fact that you and I are reading the Bible differently.
From a different perspective, almost, is what I think is what you mean, right?
Well, yeah, it's not even almost. It's entirely some of the things that we've talked about. So let's do this. For instance, when you've made some comments, how about you help us understand what you mean by interpretation when it comes to reading the Bible?
Okay, I guess I'm gonna get the Bible involved. Hope you don't mind. No, I'm just kidding. It kind of it starts with, like I was saying, in Revelation, it starts, of course, with that verse where he makes fire come down from heaven on earth. And so I was like, well, that's just very similar to what Elon Musk was doing, and totally could be coincidence and all that. So I'm reasonable, and I was like, okay. So I didn't say anything to anyone for a long time. And as throughout the last 3 years, he's just showed me.
Joe, can I stop you just for clarification? Yep. When you say that Elon Musk made fire come down to the earth, what can you talk about that a little bit? What is it you're talking about?
Yeah, you know what? Since I have my screen thing, I can put an image of what I'm talking about in the background. I didn't even think about that. I should have done that already. So they've been sending this, it's called a Falcon 9 rocket, and it's a 2-stage rocket, and I'm looking for the picture of it, sorry. But it's pretty famous or whatever, pretty popular. Here we go. This should work, I think, somewhere. Okay, there we go. I'll just blow it up a little bit just so you guys can see it while I'm talking there. And I'm not trying to debate whether this is real or fake or anything really. But the point that I noticed is that if we go with like and I'm not saying that this is the only approach to go, but I'm just trying to share kind of my how this happened for me to understand this, I guess is what I mean. So I'm just going to read that Revelation 13 verse 13. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. So we could call this a very similar thing. Would you agree? I mean, I'm not saying that it is this. I'm just saying that this could kind of match what that verse. And I know it's only one verse, but when I go back 2 verses, is when he saw something coming up out of the earth. And then in verse 13, he saw making fire come back down. And so I was like, okay, well, what's coming out of the earth? And he said, and I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. Well, actually, I got some images. Actually, I'm going for my pictures, so I don't really need to. Okay, so this booster lands, and it's a thing that they've been talking about a lot and happening. And actually, they've got quite a few of them have landed now. And it's pretty much a consistent thing now that they're landing. But so that was just like one side of it. This Revelation thing, I'm like, man, and then in verse 14, it says he did.
Can I stop you just real quick?
Yep.
So you're reading verse 13. Let's say 3 years ago, you're reading verse 13 and you see it says, it performs great signs, making fire come down out from heaven to earth in front of people. And 3 years ago, you don't have the SpaceX images in front of you or those events. So you don't necessarily interpret verse 13 in association with SpaceX. So what I understand and hear you saying is not until SpaceX happens does this verse have any fulfillment, right? So up until SpaceX landed back on the earth where its boosters put fire to the ground, because is that what you're saying, that this verse is specifically about that event?
Well, at first it was like, man, what a coincidence, that's all I think I was actually sitting in the dentist office and it just dawned on me. I was like, dragon, I just put an image up here of, this is the Dragon capsule. That sits on top of that Falcon 9 rocket. So the Falcon 9 rocket lifts Dragon into orbit. And so Dragon, the little horn at the top, Dragon goes up to and gives resupplies the space station. Okay. And it's been doing that contractor from NASA. And so that could be all coincidence, right? So I'm not trying to say, anything specific, that I'm noticing only here. It was because of, Daniel and even like just flat Earth coming into understanding of a lot of people really plays, I should say, a huge role in the end times. And actually it's like if Isaiah chapter 40 tells it basically says, and this would be an interpretation, like you were saying, this would be me interpreting this, but I don't think there's many ways that we can interpret different. Isaiah chapter 40 verses 4 and 5. They describe, let's see here, where are we? Sorry. I'll just read them quick. Every valley shall be exalted, and every mountain and hill shall be made low, and the crooked shall be made straight, and the rough places plain, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken it. So that, every valley will be lifted, and every mountain and hill will be made low. So I interpret that to be talking about the earth, because mountains and valleys are the earth. And, whether we take that literally or however, I'm sure there's other ways we could say, like, people will be brought down low, like their hearts will melt. There's a lot of things we could say, but to me, that's a prophecy of, and actually, if we continue on in these chapters, chapter 43, it said, God says, where is it? Verse 6, chapter 43, verse 6, I will say to the north, give up, and to the south, keep not back. Bring my sons from far and my daughters from the ends of the earth. And I'm learning, I'm just learning this as I go, that there's a group of people at the end, and they're in Revelation, there's 140, they're the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. And they were sent, and I don't know how this all works exactly, but they were sent from the foundation of the world, and basically born into a body just like Jesus was, and lived in a body, a man's or woman's body, just like any of us. And but it goes like Isaiah 48, I think. It goes into some pretty good detail about what this is, what God's going to do at the end. Well, let's see here. Let me read Isaiah 43, verse 9 and 10. Let all the nations be gathered together, and let the people be assembled. Who among them can declare this and show us former things? Question mark. Let them bring forth their witnesses, that they may be justified, or let them hear and say, it is truth. Ye are my witnesses, saith the Lord, and my servant whom I have chosen, that ye may know and believe me, and understand that I am he. Before me there was no God formed, neither shall there be after me. But so I'm noticing, like, just in Isaiah, that a story that I didn't understand, that I didn't know was in the Bible before, about God's sons and daughters being called. In Isaiah 42, verses 6 and 7, it says, I, the Lord, have called thee in righteousness, and will hold thine hand, and will keep thee, and will give thee for a covenant of the people, for a light of the Gentiles, to open the blind eyes, to bring out the prisoners from the prison, and them that sit in darkness out of the prison house. So I guess in a nutshell, I don't want to, waste a bunch of time, but in a nutshell, I'm seeing that at the end, God, this is in Isaiah, Zechariah 13 is kind of this same story, I think.
Right. Okay. So let me jump in just real quick, because so let me ask you, who do you think the audience is that Isaiah is speaking to?
Well, it's all flesh, because that's what it says in it says the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. So I'm not saying that it's, well, I guess it is. It's written to anyone who reads it, really.
Yeah.
And, and that could be debated or argued. I'm just, when it says all flesh shall see it together, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken it. That's not me, Isaiah, you, that's nobody but the mouth of the Lord through Isaiah. That's what I believe. But so that's my take on that.
Yeah, I do think that it's important for us to consider the historical context that the texts are written in. And I think that that is something that's going to have to guide our interpretation, so that the people that Isaiah is writing to are that's the parameter of his audience, so that the all flesh in that instance is the people that he's talking to or writing to at that particular time. That's the all flesh.
I can understand that too, but has all flesh seen the glory of God being revealed? Like all the mountains moved out of their place yet? You know what I'm saying? So
right, but I don't agree that that's what those texts mean. So when you in one of your Facebook posts earlier, you quoted the I'm looking for it if it was in Matthew or Luke, where it talks about the
Luke 3 possibly.
Yeah,
I think
Luke, right? Yeah, so Luke 3, when we have John the Baptist coming on the scene.
Mm-hmm.
He went into the region of the Jordan, proclaiming the baptism of repentance for the forgiveness of sins. As it is written in the words of Isaiah the prophet, the voice of one crying in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord, make his paths straight. Every valley shall be filled, every mountain and hill shall be made low, the crooked shall become straight, and the rough places shall become level ways, and all flesh shall see the salvation of the Lord. So again, the literal interpretation that many Christians take here, I think, is a difficult interpretation, because what I hear you saying is that you think that at some point in our future, the entire world will be flat. There won't be any mountains, and there won't. Yeah, I guess that's it. There won't be any mountains.
Yeah, I see what you're saying now. I understand what you're saying now. You're saying, and actually, my friend John Foss made a better point about this than I even could. He said, I can't go 5 miles without seeing a hill or a mountain. He said, I can't go I can't go a mile without seeing a hill. So he said, that's obviously not literal in that case. But for me, in my understanding and what I see with my eyes, I guess I could say it is somewhat literal. Do you know what I mean? But I do know what you're saying about John the Baptist, though. He was preparing the way for Jesus, and he quoted Isaiah saying that. And so,
right. So then that puts the context of what he's quoting in his particular historical event. So we have to then say, if he is the voice crying out in the wilderness, make straight the way of the Lord, prepare the way, every valley. The idea is that the prophets looked for a time when the people of Israel, remember, were divided after Solomon, and the 10 tribes were cast out into the nations. Okay. So my understanding of the language of the Gentiles or the nations is actually a reference to those 10 tribes spread out into the nations.
I can see that too. I can see that.
So when John the Baptist is the voice crying out in the wilderness, and he's calling the people to Jesus, he's calling them, right? And so you read from Isaiah where it called to the north, and it called to the south, and it called for the sons and the daughters,
gathering them up.
That's the context of that gathering.
Yep.
Okay. Then that takes us into Revelation chapter 7 with the collection of the 144,000.
Yep. And they get sealed in their forehead right there.
Right, symbolically. But so the thing that I would like to go into now, and that is that the term that you've been using is the end.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I should explain what I mean. You right?
Well, I'm sure that I know, but I don't want to put words into your mouth. So when you talk about the end, what is it that you are referring to?
Well, I guess that I should be more clear anytime I'm saying the end. But I think I'm trying to remember one of the phrases that I used that you had kind of mentioned. I think it was the day of the Lord, and that, I can't be specific about what that is, but the end or the last days, or what I consider to be the time before Jesus returns and kills the beast and whatever. I think that the time that it's talking about is about 7 years before he returns. And in the, I just lost my train of thought on what, the end, and the end. The end of the age, if we could call it that, would be the beginning of the day of the Lord, or the 1,000-year reign of Christ on earth. So it's the end of Satan's dominion, and it's the beginning of Christ's dominion. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. I just am trying to think about how to have a discussion in this way. So the what makes you think that Jesus is coming back in our future?
Lots of things, actually. We were discussing a little bit about Revelation 20. And go ahead.
Rather than go to Revelation 20, I think that part of what I said earlier in that is that you and I are interpreting the Bible from different perspectives. I think that it's going to be helpful to at least go back in time to a certain extent to a particular place to begin with. And I don't think Revelation 20 is the best place. So I guess the question that I had for you in terms of what makes you think Jesus is coming back in our future is where we need to begin by establishing where the Bible talks about the idea that you're
I think I know what you're saying.
Okay. So let's say, for instance, because you chose the term end of the age. Okay. So in Matthew 24 and verse 3, Jesus, we read, and he sat on the Mount of Olives. The disciples came to him privately saying, tell us when these things will be and what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age. Okay.
Yeah, I think I'm guessing that they're probably talking about the same thing that I'm talking about, the end of the age, or the
right. Okay.
Yeah,
so, but see, the problem is that we would then have to say, okay, if they're talking about the same thing that you're talking about, where is their idea coming from? So if I were to say that the disciples here, when they ask Jesus, what will be the sign of the end of the age? The question is, where did they get that idea about the end of the age?
They could have gotten it from Isaiah. I mean, they could have gotten it from any of those prophets, I think.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. But again, the end of the age is the term that I think that we need to unpack. So let's read a little bit farther and see if anything else can help us out with this. Jesus answered and said, see that no one leads you astray, for many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and they will lead many astray. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see that you are not alarmed. For this must take place, but the end is not yet. Now, it doesn't say the end of the age is not yet, but I think that we could probably be safe to say that's the same reference of the end, right? The end is
close to it. Yeah.
Okay. The nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and earthquakes. All of these are but the beginning of birth pangs. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and put you to death, and you will be hated by all Gentiles or nations for my name's sake. And then many will fall away and betray one another and hate one another. Many false prophets will arise and lead many astray, and because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold. But the one who endures to the end of the age will be saved. And the gospel of this kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. Okay, so let's see if I wanted to go back down. If we go to verse 29, all right, immediately after the tribulation. Okay, so the tribulation was mentioned in verse 9.
Mm-hmm.
They will deliver you up to the tribulation. And then Jesus says, immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then will appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds in great glory. And I'm looking for the particular, where am I looking? I'm wanting.
I think I know which verse
Here it is. Here it is. No, here we go. Here we go. I should have just kept reading. The powers of heaven will be shaken. He will send his angels out with a loud trumpet call. Verse 32, from the fig tree learn this lesson. As soon as its branch becomes tender and puts out its leaves, you will know that summer is near. So also, when you see all these things, okay, so what I would do in this situation, because the disciples said to Jesus in verse 3, tell us when all these things will be.
Mm-hmm.
So then in verse 33, Jesus says, so when you see all these things, you know that he is near at the very gates. It's interesting that he says he and not I, but nonetheless.
I got the King James says, know that it is near, but.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. Know that it is near. So summer, probably he's using that metaphor, but verse 34, I think, is key for us to think about. Truly, I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place.
Mm-hmm.
Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. So the thing that I would like you to consider, and maybe if we could discuss that, because I think that this is what I was talking about in terms of
verse 34.
The hinge, right?
Yep. I understand your thought process on that. I do. And I can't argue with it. I can't argue with it because you could say that he was talking about this generation that he was in, that, 2000 years ago. It could be said clearly that he was talking about that. But at the same time as that, it can also be said that he's talking about all the things he just said till that generation, when they see all those things, that, you know what I'm saying? This generation, I think he's talking about this, like if he said, you'll see, if he started stacking things up, you'll see this, you'll see this, you'll see this, and this generation shall not pass. You know what I'm saying? Kind of that angle. That's how I understand it. Because of all the other, that single verse, I couldn't say it is or isn't either way, but it's just because of all the other things that I've,
Well, I think I hear a little bit of what you're trying to get at, but what I would like to propose for us to understand is that Jesus is talking to the generation that is before him in that time period. So basically, Jesus is answering the disciples' question, and he's saying, your question, when will all these things take place, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? So all of these things, the coming of the Son of Man and the end of the age, Jesus says to the disciples, will happen within this generation. Okay, so Jesus is putting a time marker for the fulfillment of his words so that they don't go.
Oh, let me just ask a question. So are you just a general, rough timeline thing of your understanding is you're saying Jesus was about 34, 3 years old or whatever, and he's talking to his disciple. They ask him this, and he tells them that in verse 34, and you're thinking he's talking about maybe 20 years or 30 years or 50 years later or sometime right in that is what you're, is that, am I getting you right there? Okay.
That's right. Yeah. The typical generation marker is 40 years.
Yep.
So if Jesus is 30 years old and this is 30 AD, 40 years later is 70 AD when the temple was destroyed. And that's exactly what Jesus is talking about here.
I can understand your angle. I mean, I disagree with it because of, I mean, countless things that are in Revelation that, and that's what I'd like to kind of show you as far as the main reason why I'm very solid in that belief going the different. For there's verse 34, thinking he's talking about the generation that he's describing all these things happening in. And the reason why is Revelation, all these things have to happen. And there's actually the example of the rocket landing, if we analyze that, just that one verse, we got to consider that there's only one thing in the world right now and one that has that capability. So I'm just, I'm not saying that it has to be that or something, but I'm saying that I don't think that anyone was making fire come down from heaven on earth in the sight of men that we know of during that, I guess, what would it be, that first century, I guess is what you call it, or what would you call that, first century?
Right. Yeah. The first century. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just one example. There's a beast that the whole world worships when they see it. And that's in Revelation 17. And actually, yeah, you and I have talked about that, that eighth wandering star. That's a big part of it too. Because of what Enoch said when he went to this place, when he saw those 7 stars that were bound in the heaven. And then all the other angels that came down and sinned with women, they were all buried in the earth for 70 generations, but then they got led up there too, because the spirits of heaven dwell in heaven. That's what God said. And the spirits that were born on the earth, like their offspring, the giants, the spirits of those giants stay on the earth because they were born on the earth or whatever.
All right. So yeah, what I'd like to try to do, this is the way that I've tried to summarize the idea of the New Testament, and that is that what Jesus says in the Olivet discourse, it sets the stage for how to understand everything that follows after the Olivet discourse until the fulfillment of Jesus's words, which was the end of the age, which was symbolized by the destruction of the temple, which brought an end to the old covenant structure. So the book of Revelation would be something that followed the Olivet discourse. So the Olivet discourse shows us how to understand what's happening in the book of Revelation, because the book of Revelation is about Matthew 24.
Well, let's just do a quick, I'm not saying you're wrong or anything. I'm not argumentative like that. What I do want to say is that the book of Revelation was written obviously it was written after Jesus had ascended into heaven, right? And it was from him in heaven. It was from him sent by a signified angel to John in the form of a vision. And in that vision, the Son of Man, or Jesus, he dictates the first 3 chapters, just his own words, and then kind of starts the story. And in those, like the, I mean, I'm just saying the very first verses, to show unto his servants things which must shortly come to pass. So, and
So,
and that
so
that
that's
actually, oh, go. I was just gonna say that actually goes, leans a little like you're thinking is shortly come to pass. 2,000 years, is that shortly or not? I understand.
that's right. Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
things
So
that happen, though,
I'm sorry.
I said, but the things that happen, though, a lot of them haven't happened or are happening, I believe now. But
Well, that's right. So that's part of our discussion as well. So the context for what we're the context for what we're discussing has to be put within the time frame that follows Jesus's discussion in the Olivet discourse, because he's talking about when will all of these things take place, what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age. So you have this anticipation from the ascension when Jesus leaves the disciples in Acts chapter 1, and then everything after that, they have an anticipation of the events in history for them that are going to unfold. So that's why you have Paul writing his letters. That's why you have John writing his letters, because they're writing to the disciples during the period of tribulation, during the period of affliction. Okay. So
and John even said that he was a brother in tribulation.
that's right. That's right. So, So what that does for us is that puts the context of John's book in the context of having to take place within the generation to whom Jesus spoke. So you have the language of these things, because the book of Revelation is now right at the very, very end, because he says these things must shortly take place, for the time is near. And that is where that's what we have in Jesus's Olivet discourse when he says, take a listen from the fig tree and learn that when you see its branch becoming tender and it's putting out leaves, you know that summer is near. So that's what Jesus is saying. When you see these things, you know that the end is near. So that's what John is saying here too. He's saying it's near. The things that Jesus told us about are about to wrap up. So what that does for us, at least, because the difficulty is most people think that Jesus's words about the sun and the moon and the stars are literal, okay? Because Jesus said the sun and the moon and the stars, so he must have meant the sun and the moon and the stars. The problem with that is that
every
he said,
prophet did too, though.
I'm sorry?
Just about every prophet said the same thing too.
So they used the sun and the moon and the stars, but they used them as symbols of something, so they're not literal. But my point is that Jesus said that within the generation to whom he spoke, the sun would stop shining.
No, I have to disagree with that. He didn't say within the generation to whom he spoke. He was speaking about a time, and you know what I'm saying, and he was saying and I'm not saying that you're right or I'm right, but that I mean, if we start talking about things like the dragon and the like these things, and like the fire coming down from heaven, people hiding in the dirt because they can see the throne of God, or the what does it say, that his tabernacle is open and so people can see it, and that
right now I feel like you're taking us down an avenue that's worth talking about, but I think that it's distracting from the fact that what I tried to point out earlier was in Matthew 24. In Matthew 24, Jesus is talking about one time period where certain things are going to take place.
Yeah, a tribulation period or whatever.
Right, and that's the affliction. Okay, so let me suggest that the affliction that Jesus is talking about is the persecution that the Jewish leaders are going to put on the followers of Jesus. Okay, so if you go back to Matthew 23, when Jesus is giving the scribes and the Pharisees an ear beating, he says to them, let's see. Okay. He says to them in verse 29, so this is Matthew 23 and verse 29. He says, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you build the tombs of the prophets and decorate the monuments of the righteous, saying, if we had been alive in the days of our fathers, we would not have taken part with them in the shedding of the blood of the prophets. So, Jesus says, you testify against yourselves that you are sons of those who murdered the prophets. Fill up then the measure of your fathers, you serpents, you brood of vipers. How are you to escape being sentenced to Gehenna?" I don't think the word should be translated hell. The word is Gehenna. "Therefore, I send you." Okay, now this is what Jesus says. Therefore, Jesus says, therefore, I, Jesus, I send to you, Pharisees and scribes, prophets and wise men and scribes. Those are the disciples of Jesus. "Some of whom you will kill and crucify. Some you will flog in your synagogues and persecute from town to town." Now, just imagine now the book of Acts. That's what we see the Jews doing in the book of Acts. They stone Stephen. They stone Paul. They pursue Paul from town to town to town. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, Jesus is saying to the scribes and the Pharisees of his generation.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you on that.
Okay?
I do.
Right?
I think that there's 2 times that the Holy Ghost is it comes and fills people in that way.
Okay, but
that like about the apostles. But yeah, continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. So, but what Jesus says is, this is going to happen so that on you may come all the righteous bloodshed on the earth. From the blood of righteous Abel, who was the first prophet who spoke to the first rebel, right? Abel spoke to Cain. Abel was the first prophet that spoke to the first rebel, and the first rebel killed the first prophet. That's the imagery that Jesus is painting the picture here. Okay. Jesus then says in verse 36, "I say to you, all these things will come upon this generation." Mm-hmm. So we have the fact that Jesus is saying to the Jewish leaders, you are going to replay the murder of the prophets.
Mm-hmm. And they did. Yeah.
That's right. But
in like the 1st century. Is that all happened in the 1st century? Yes.
That's what the book. Okay, that's what the book of Revelation is about. That's all.
Well, no, now here's where I can agree with you. But until you say that that's what the book of Revelation is about, because it has nothing to do with any of that. The book of Revelation is about a time when go ahead.
Joe.
Go ahead.
John clearly identifies himself as someone who is suffering in the tribulation.
Yep. Okay? But he was writing about things that must come to pass, right? Or must shortly come to pass.
For him, right, and for his audience, right. They were at the very end of the tribulation.
Well, let me ask you like some questions about just some of the things in Revelation that clearly show that he's talking about. See, I'm not saying that he's not talking to that generation. He was clearly talking to that generation, but he was talking about more than just that generation. And I guess what I mean is all the things that happen in Revelation, there's a lot of things that happen up in heaven that they end up changing the dominion from Satan's dominion to Christ's dominion. The body of Christ takes that dominion away from Satan at the end.
Yeah, but see, the problem is now that you're bringing in a different end, because the end that Jesus was discussing in Matthew 24 was the end of the age. That is the only end the Bible knows about. And the end
or I'm just saying, what age, or I mean, what do you mean by, like Matthew 24, Jesus was talking about the end of the age, clearly, but you're saying that already happened.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and to me, my question is, why is it that Christ is not ruling right now? Because he rules for eternity when that domain.
I would, yeah, I would disagree entirely with you that he is not ruling. That's what the entire book of Revelation displays, is that he ascends in chapter 4, he ascends into heaven, takes his seat, and then begins to rule over the world. And the first thing that he does is he exacts justice and vindication on the
dragon and the beast,
on the Jewish leaders and anyone else who identified with the Jewish leaders as they opposed his people, the church. So I would disagree with the fact that Jesus isn't reigning. Now, you and I might,
or I might have said that, worded that wrong. But as far as the dominion goes, we're talking about the dominion of the host of heaven and the dominion of the kingdom, the entire kingdom. Like right now, Jesus is, well, I'm not saying he's, what I'm getting at is whose sorceries deceived all nations back in 70 AD or whatever. Who, and
yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question. So I said this before in some of our exchanges on Facebook, and I want to say it again. And the best illustration I have, I think, is what you and I can understand as flat earthers. Okay, so if you were talking with someone who still believed in the globe, right, and you were challenging the way that they looked at the world, and they heard what you said, but then in their mind they thought, well, what about the southern celestial poles?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I understand that you
Hold on
real
quick. Let me just finish real quick, because I want to reiterate it just for the audience as well. That is, I would say in that situation, okay, look, that's a great question about the southern celestial poles. Okay, that's a great question. There's something else that you and I have to actually establish first. Let's get this straight first. And then if you want to start asking questions about how this works on a flat earth, that's fine. Okay, so your question about the sorceries and the deception of the nations, that's
just one thing.
Right. But that's like asking about the southern celestial poles, okay? Because
no, because I have an understanding of this that's really clear. So I'm not saying I'm not trying to argue just every point that you're making. I'm not like that, but I do have strong arguments for the things that have not happened, clearly have not happened, because we're talking about things that happen up in heaven that we're going to see with our eyes. We're going to see it. Right. We're going to see an eighth wandering star that was not there before. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. I'm going to say those things have already happened.
What? Okay. Give me the example of it. How can you say they've happened? You'd have to give me, some information on what you mean.
Well, the only thing that we can go on, because the only thing we have in our Bibles is the book of Revelation. Now, if you want to consult Josephus,
we don't have to consult Josephus. I'm just saying that the great dragon that was cast out of heaven down into the earth and tormented the people in earth, and there was a group of 144,000 people that were redeemed and taken up to heaven. Is that hasn't happened, has it?
Yes, it's happened. Yeah.
And who are these people? Because they were alive when they were taken.
What I said before about the reference to calling the sons and daughters from the nations far and wide, that's the collection, right? That's the collection.
Yeah, that's happening now.
Okay, so, right, but the thing that we're stuck on is the fact that we have to understand that the Bible, the New Testament, gives us the parameters that keep us from going too far in making our interpretation. So when you say those things haven't happened, that then requires you to prove that they didn't happen. Okay,
I can prove that they didn't happen very easily. One of the things is that there's going to be hail. That's like, I don't remember how it references it, but it's big chunks of heavy hail that are going to fall, and the sky is going to fall on fire down to the earth, and people are going to be killed, and all the grass on the earth is going to be burnt up. Like, these kinds of things have not happened.
Okay, so again, now this goes to one of the underlying approaches for us to interpret the Bible, and that is that I understand the book of Revelation to be entirely symbolic.
I don't think it is. I mean, everybody's free to think what they want, but I guess what I'm saying is it applies to things that I'm seeing anyway.
Well, yeah, again, so the very first verse says, the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants the things that must soon take place. He signified it.
He sent it by a signified angel, yeah.
He signified it. He symbolized it. The word in the Greek has to do with symbol. That is that John tells us.
He sent it as a visual vision.
Yeah, of symbol, of representation. So right away we see.
That's picky there.
I'm sorry?
That's picky there, because there's a lot of things that are clearly not symbolic or whatever.
Well, no, I don't know. So what I'm trying to say is that the first verse tells us that the rest of what follows is symbol.
No.
Because
that's just ridiculous.
That's ridiculous. Okay.
I'm just saying.
Hold on.
I can give you 100 examples.
Well, it doesn't necessarily matter that you can give me 101 examples. You have to deal with the very first verse of the Bible, of the book of Revelation, which says that it is symbolic.
Okay, I'm gonna have to argue with that, but I'm gonna go to look up that word just to make sure, because I never have. Signified, right?
Yeah.
Just because there's things in there that are definitely not just symbolic. That's, obviously everything that I say is my belief. So, there is no scholar rule book for the Bible. It's the word.
Well, if you mean by that there's no one single text that is agreed upon that directs the scholars to help them interpret the Bible, I would agree with you. But
I guess what I didn't really mean it quite like that. I guess what I mean is, it says that it's written to the servants of God to show them something. I take that as being written to me.
Well, the difficulty with that is that you aren't the one that John is talking to.
That's what you're saying. That's what you're saying. But I disagree with that.
Right. Look at verse 9. Look at verse 9.
Okay.
I, John, your brother in the tribulation.
In tribulation. He was in the island of Patmos. Yes.
Okay, no. I, John, your brother in the tribulation.
And companion in tribulation and in the kingdom and patience of Jesus Christ, was in the isle that is called Patmos for the word of God and for the testimony of Jesus Christ.
Right. I want you to focus on the fact that I'm showing you that he's talking to someone. He's saying, your brother.
John is my brother. John is your brother.
Not in the tribulation. You're not in the tribulation. You're not. Okay. You're not in the tribulation.
Why?
Because Okay, because in Matthew 24, Jesus shows us what the tribulation refers to, which is what I just spent time on in chapter 23, where he talked about the scribes and the Pharisees murdering the followers of Jesus.
And he's not only talking about that. He's talking about much more than that. Because if we can get all these other books involved.
Hold on.
Okay.
Hold on. Again, I'm going to try to reiterate the fact that Jesus gives us the parameters. He gives us the markers to understand the time frame in which he's speaking.
You're trying to limit his time frame.
No. I'm sorry. Let me say it this way. No, hold on.
Okay.
I'm not trying to limit. He is limiting. He limits it. Okay. He limits it by saying all these things will come on this generation. And then he repeats
the
himself.
Generation he's talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's right.
He's talking about the generation that's going to see the dragon up in heaven too. He's talking about the generation that's going to see all the things that we're seeing right now.
No, because now you're stepping outside of it, and rather than limiting Jesus's words, you are now
No, I'm not. You know, Jesus told me in John, in the Gospel of John, Jesus told me, because he told me that I can't remember the exact words, that I'm a disciple of his. And he tells anybody that and I'm trying to remember exactly where it is. John 8, maybe.
I'm not going to deny the fact that you are a disciple, but you're not a disciple in the same context of that generation, because you are
talking about that generation and any generation that sees these things happen.
Okay. That's where our hiccup is, right here. Okay. You are wanting to extend rather than limit, right? So earlier you said to me, you are limiting Jesus's words. Rather,
well, you're limiting them to a certain time. And he was saying, you're trying to, what is it? Like if there was two options, you're trying to close off one of the options and say that only this option, when in reality, he was talking about this generation that he was talking about, right? So it doesn't mean that he's talking about the ones right there in the room or the ones he's talking to only. Most certainly not, because he tells about all these things, and it's not only Revelation. Let's talk about Daniel, because Daniel was shown a vision of the time of the end, and all these things would be at the time of the end.
Yeah. So I feel like we're, if we want
what are the beasts? What are the beasts? Because if you don't have an answer for that, what are the beasts that are deceiving the world?
Hold on, I do, but I want you to hear my assessment of what just happened right now.
I hear you and disagree with it.
Hold on. What just happened right now was, as a baller, you said, what about
I'm not here to talk about that. No, I'm not here to talk about like the psychology. Let's get into the word. Seriously, otherwise we're just gonna be done.
Hold on. Just hear me out, please. Just hear me out.
Okay.
I gave this illustration earlier, and it just happened right now. You are bringing up an issue that follows from establishing something prior to it. We have to establish something prior to answering the question that you just brought up. So you said that Daniel talked about the end, right?
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you, but you and I disagree on what the end is referring to.
That's why I'm asking you. So for you to be consistent, that's why I'm asking you, what was Daniel talking about? What were those beasts that he saw in his vision that flew up to heaven and cast the stars down? What were they?
Okay. The end.
Because they would have happened in 70 AD, right? I mean, you're saying that this all happened then. So what were these beasts that were making fire come down, and where was all that? This is what I'm doing. I'm proving that there is a problem with the way that you're looking at this.
Okay. Right.
I'm only saying that because I can point out 100 things that happen in Revelation and Daniel and all these beasts. These beasts are very specific.
Right. Okay.
So that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So the end that Daniel is talking about is the end of the age. Okay. In Daniel chapter 7, and chapter 9, he talks about how the end of the covenant comes about. Okay. The end of the age then that Jesus is talking about is the same end that Daniel is talking about.
Yes.
And they are both talking about the end of the old covenant as it gives way to the new covenant, which happened in the first century. Now, when Daniel refers to the beasts, he's talking about nations.
Nope. Kingdoms. Much different.
Okay. If you want to split a hair that way.
It's not splitting a hair, because a nation is
okay. The kingdom.
Than a kingdom.
Okay, how about the kingdom of Babylon, the kingdom of Assyria, the kingdom of Greece, and the kingdom of Rome? Is that better?
About the way that I understand it is the kingdom of SpaceX, the kingdom of Roscosmos, that's how I understand it. Because what does it say? It says the fourth beast is the fourth kingdom. So the fourth kingdom has great iron.
Who was the first beast then, Joe?
I believe the one in Daniel 7 verse 4. Or you're talking to Daniel, right?
Well, yes, Daniel. Yes.
In Daniel, he saw 4 beasts. Daniel 7 verse 4. This beast that he saw, it was I'll go there because I don't want to misquote it. Let's see. It had first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. Interesting that it had wings, but it said, I beheld. So Daniel beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. Well, in with all the other kingdoms or the beasts, if we notice that one has wings and it was lifted up from the earth, it was made to stand. I'm saying the shuttle. Now, I'm not saying it is this, but I'm saying if you follow this understanding, there's a lot of answers that it gives. If we said that,
hold on, just real quick, okay. What we have to establish is not that it could be, but what it is, because if
I know what it is, and I'm trying to share it with you. The Holy Spirit showed me what it is, so I'm not in a debate about that. To be honest, I just can't be. It isn't something that I can unknow.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. Do you see an analogy? Because there are 2 images that we have in the book of Daniel. We have the image of a statue, right? And then we also have the images of beasts. Okay.
Yeah. Very clear stories in Daniel 7 and 8. He had visions. Yeah.
Okay. Do you see a difference between the vision, the dream of the statue, and the vision of the beasts?
Yes. I'm not saying that they're not related in some way, but they very well could be. And here's the thing: is a lot of people, okay, the Babylonian Empire and all these empires seem to match along with this too. But what we have to keep in mind is that, and this is very important, I believe, if you and I were in a room and we were in there with Daniel, okay, and the room was a closed room and it had one little window about this big, and Daniel was looking through the window, and you and me were sitting behind him, we couldn't see out the window, and Daniel said these things. That's how we have to look at it. Or he's in your pickup truck next to you, and he sees something out that window and you can't see it because you're driving or whatever, and he says all these things. So it's a visual description, and then he's given an interpretation of that. And the interpretation says, these great beasts, which are four kings, which shall arise out of the earth. But an important thing we have to note is that anytime that Daniel or John is talking about kings, they looked like horns. Very important. They looked like horns. So
right. But again, the symbolism of horns in the Bible.
Don't add symbolism though. This Daniel just said he saw. It has 10 horns. He was looking out the window and he said it has 10 horns. So I'm just saying that to add the symbolism is where I've seen everybody go down a different way of thinking about it. I'm reading it like a child. Someone's given us a visual description. The second one was like a bear. It raised itself up on one side and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it. That's talking about the Russian Soyuz. Okay. Right. I'll give you my reasoning for these 4 verses.
Well, let me just stop you just real quick because I've got to wrap it up in the next couple of minutes. Okay. So trying to think of how to say this. What I said earlier, I'm going to try to reiterate right now, and that is that the author is writing to a particular audience, and that gives us the context to place their understanding of what Daniel or Jesus or John or Paul is writing to them. So in the historical time period of the book of Daniel, we have Nebuchadnezzar, who was Babylonian, right? Yeah. So within that historical context, we have a lot besides the vision of the statue and the imagery of the 4 beasts. We also have Nebuchadnezzar described as a tree that gets cut down. And he also gets becomes like a beast himself, right? Okay, so the image or the symbol of the 4 beasts is what we see in I just turned away from it. Let me go back. Daniel chapter 7 and verse 23, just for instance. Then he said, as for the 4th beast, there shall be a 4th kingdom on the land, which shall be different from all the kingdoms, and it shall devour the whole land and trample it down to pieces.
Yep.
We have
SpaceX. The reason why I say that.
Hold on. Okay. I'm going to try to limit Daniel's, or rather, I'm trying to show that Daniel's meaning is limited to a kingdom. Okay, we have the Babylonians, we have the Assyrians, we have the Greco-Persians, and then we have Rome. Those are the 4 kingdoms.
Let me mention something that is very important right here. You're right. There's 4 kingdoms. I'm not arguing with that. But the kingdoms that Daniel saw, they went up to heaven. From the ground up to heaven.
Okay, that's symbol. It's symbolic.
No, it cast the stars down.
I'm sorry?
It cast the stars down to the ground.
It was
at the very end.
Symbolic.
No.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. So can I show you real quick? Okay, I know that I'd like to keep this going. I'd like to keep this going if we can in the future, but what I need to do real quick, and maybe we'll leave it at this, okay?
Okay.
I'd like you to consider looking at Ezekiel chapter 13. Is it Ezekiel 13 is what I'm thinking of?
I'm familiar with it.
No, that's not it. I'm drawing a blank.
Let me mention one thing. Very important about what Daniel saw. He saw a mouth speaking great things, go up from the ground. It was moving across the ground without touching the ground.
Yeah.
And then it went and it pulled up a ram with 2 horns up to the host of heaven, and it cast down the 2 horns to the ground, and then it cast down the stars to the ground. And it says in Daniel 8 verse 11, yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host. That's Michael. That's up there. That's up there. So it's not a kingdom on the ground that's able to do this. It is, but the beasts that these kingdoms have are not on the ground. They're going up to heaven. So I just want to add that, because what I believe is these rockets, the technology and the spirit of exploration or whatever in space exploration, that whole thing is the spirits of the kings of the Medes. And that's in Jeremiah 51. The Lord says he's going to raise them up as a device against Babylon.
Against Babylon, right? So, okay. It wasn't Ezekiel 13. For some reason, I don't know why I thought of Ezekiel 13. It's Isaiah 13. Okay. So
I just read that in a video just the other day.
Right. So you have to, right. Okay. So what I'd like to do maybe is to leave it at that, but I'll close with saying that the impasse that you and I are having is that I understand the language the Bible uses about heaven and earth and stars and beasts are symbolic of people and nations and religious structures. Okay, so
and why didn't let me ask you a question?
Okay.
Well, you don't have to answer it, but I just want to say, then why did Daniel and John describe them as beasts and not just say these were men or these were? Do you know what I'm saying? So I'm not asking you to answer it. I'm just
no. That's a great question, and that's simply the fact that we have to recognize that's just the way the Bible speaks. It's almost like saying, "Are you married?" I'm asking you, Joe. Are you married?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Have you had a girlfriend, or do you have a girlfriend?
I don't at the moment, but I have.
Have you ever written her poetry?
Possibly when I was younger, maybe.
Okay. Well, people write poetry because the imagery is much more vivid.
But this ain't poetry, I don't believe. That's my belief, but
no. Well, that's the issue that we're having. Okay, so what I'd like to suggest to you is to hear what I'm saying, that when Jesus says that the sun and the moon and the stars are going to fall in Matthew 24, and we see that also in the book of Revelation. And
Isaiah 13.
Right. But you have to then understand that the description of Isaiah 13 is about the destruction of Babylon.
Yes, Babylon, and that's I should have brought that up.
Hold on.
Okay.
And that is symbolized in the heavens.
What if Babylon, mystery Babylon is space. And
okay. All right, hold on. You're jumping too far ahead. My suggestion, again, maybe we'll close at this and we'll come back at another time when we can. My suggestion is to look at Isaiah 13 and see the sun and the moon and the stars as a description of Babylon back in the 6th century BC when they are destroyed. Okay, so the Bible describes the fall of nations with the destruction of the sun and the moon and the stars, because that's the way the Bible speaks.
I disagree with that, but
I know.
We could go on all day about that, but I guess the only thing I would point out is that if there was a way for all the technical things like who it's written to and all if you get rid of the intellectual stuff, there's a story to understand here. That's all I'm saying.
And I would say if you get rid of the intellectual, and I would say that if you get rid of what you call as intellectual stuff, then you are going to go down rabbit holes that aren't intended to be gone down.
Well, I don't think that the word of God can have a rabbit hole. It's the word of God.
I agree. As long as you keep the parameters that the Bible gives us, which is what Jesus says by saying, this generation, all these things.
You're really clinging to that little possibility of him saying this generation, meaning that he's talking about the generation that he's standing in.
That's right. That's because that's what the word means.
Well,
all right, Joe, I
okay.
gotta wrap it up. I do thank you for coming on.
Hey, thank you. I had fun anyway. We can disagree and still have fun, right?
Oh yeah, no doubt. But this is where a lot of my passion lies in terms of understanding the scriptures and trying to help others understand it as well. And I think that we can just maybe, again, come back in the future and pick up with Isaiah 13 again. So spend some time looking at Isaiah 13 and try to consider that the language of the sun and the moon and the stars coming undone is the Bible's way of talking about nations.
Okay? And that's something that I can, if we'll talk again sometime, and I can go over. See, that's what I would like to explain, setting aside all your concerns. And obviously that's not very fair, but what I'm saying, just for the sake of trying to understand what I'm seeing, looking at it from a 5-year-old set of eyes is the way I'm looking at it. And he showed me things to come. That's what I'm saying. So, but I enjoyed talking to you about it.
Yeah, you too. And I enjoy your globe. It's actually very, very creative.
Next time I'll have something else fun.
I like it. All right, Joe. All right.
Thank you.
God bless, man.
Yeah, have a good one.
All right, take care.
Bye.
All right, well, there you go. Thanks so much for those of you who tuned in either now or later. And I hope that you will follow up either with some questions. If you heard anything that piqued your interest, make sure that you make comments. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell notification to keep up to date with Rethinking Revelation. I'm your host, Travis Finley. Until next time.